I'm gonna prove to you why America's Got Talent is fake when it comes to the background stories for these contestants and the interviews that they do. Unfortunately, so much of what they say is not only coached and deceptive, it's outright lies.
Contestants are fed exact lines to repeat, whether or not these lines are in agreement with the contestants' actual thoughts, feelings, and personality. There were things that I had to say that I would never actually say.
Let's dig into this. What's up, y'all? It's John Master Lee here, back once again with another expose on America's Got Talent. Honestly, I didn't think this rabbit hole would go this deep when it comes to how AGT is manipulating what we see on TV. Lulu and I got into watching America's Got Talent this year because it was the champions, right? The best talent from all over the world. But the problem was that very early on, we started to notice patterns of viewer manipulation, reactions from the audience that really didn't happen, judges' comments that were edited.
You've got a massive career in front of you. I really, really do.
The hell?
A big conspiracy about a golden buzzer.
You are so worthy of the golden buzzer. But this is very early in the night, and I can only choose one. So I'm gonna keep my golden buzzer.
Manipulation about what song choice people can sing. Not to mention rights issues where videos were taken down because of it. I'm not even just talking about one artist here. A lot of the acts have been affected by this. But in this particular video, I do want to bring up one particular artist that we've been following and that we love, and that's Marcelito, who seems to be caught up in the brunt of so much of this controversy, unfortunately. And if you see him in interviews and hear his story, quite frankly, he's a very inspiring guy. He's definitely lived a very tragic life and had to overcome so much just to be able to get here. And he just comes across like a truly humble person. Which makes it all the much more unfortunate that America's Got Talent, the TV producers for that show, are manipulating him and coaching him to say things that even got him to lie about his background just to make it more appealing for American audiences. I'm gonna show you what I mean by that. Now, if you go back to Marcelito's very first performance on America's Got Talent Champions, they did a fantastic backgrounder on him, like they do with all these contestants, in particular the ones that they feel have the best chance of going to the final, right? They really invest in these artists in order to be able to extract from them a story that they know people are going to latch onto. And I'll tell you, you don't even really need to hype up his background to know that it is a sob story, one that will get you crying.
When I was 7 years old, my mother, she left me and my father was in jail. I was orphan. I live in the street. For many years, I tried to find my family.
Before he was even a teenager, he lived on the streets for a long period of time. And it really wasn't until much later in life that he discovered he had this unnatural talent to be able to seen as a guy and a girl while working in this hen house, I guess taking care of chickens, if you will. And he would just sing to the chickens. And lo and behold, he discovered he had this amazing ability. Lucky chickens. And when he discovered that talent, he went on Filipinas Got Talent, their version of AGT.
One day, I saw the show Philippines Got Talent. I thought that's the way I can find my family.
And this was something that was covered in his background story.
I was hoping they would see me sing.
And it was because of his exposure on that show that he ended up finding his family.
After my audition aired, the whole country was trying to find my family.
And was reunited with them for the very first time. Beautiful story. Now, where the deception comes in here is that last part wasn't true. Yes, Marcelito does say here that because of him being on the show, that he was able to reconnect with his family, as if the show was a big part of a nationwide search to find out where his family was because he couldn't find them. Well, the thing is that Marcelito has done a number of interviews way before he got to America's Got Talent. And in those interviews, it was pretty clear that he had connected with his family before then. You see, while Marcelito was out on the streets, he actually did meet up with both his mom and dad at some point. It was through this crazy hap chance of one of his customers. He used to sell balut on the side of the street. And if you're not familiar with balut, it's a delicacy for the Philippines that I don't think most people in the world would actually like to eat. Lulu loves it.
I still can't stomach it.
And one of his customers who came by regularly noticed that, you know what, I think I know your father. And lo and behold, it ended up being his father, and he connected with his father at that time. And even at that time, he moved in with his father. At that time, his father had gotten out of jail, obviously, and had remarried. And unfortunately, because of that dynamic, Marcelito didn't quite get along with the family, and he ended up going back to live on the streets again. But this time, with a purpose. He wanted to go and find his mother. And lo and behold, he did find his mother. He found the rest of his family, including his other siblings. That's something that they don't mention on the TV show as well. And his mom and siblings actually did help him for a period of time because he ended up in the hospital and required some surgery, and they helped pay for it. Now, there was some conflict, I think, with that family dynamic as well. I mean, it just kind of goes to show you that things rarely have a happy ending when people reconnect. And at that time, he decided to go back on his own again. And that was about the time he ended up going on Filipinas Got Talent. So all that happened before he got on the show and won the show. Now, I think there might be some aspects of the story where maybe the family reconciled, in other words, got back together again because he was winning the show. Marcelito seems like the kind of person who has forgiven his family over the years, and so they have reconnected. But for the most part, his mom's side of the family and his dad's side of the family have independent lives at this point. Now, why would AGT make him lie about something like that? Well, I think it's for a couple of reasons here. One is that the story that he told on AGT is a very simplified version of his life story. It's easy to grasp onto, and the climax of him winning the show, culminating with him finding his family, is a hell of a great story. But the truth of the matter is, well, unfortunately, it's even more heartbreaking than that, and it requires a little bit more time to explain.
So the several days on set, I was always told to talk about singing. I was told to talk about singing as a child, singing as an adult, you know, my passion of singing, what I think of other singers. But I was not allowed to talk about acting, contortion, gaming, which are more of like my main focuses. And then even when it came to my dreams, they only wanted me to talk about singing.
The other scenario that I noticed where Marcelito was coached into saying certain things was during the finals when AGT put up an interview of the different contestants. Now, this interview actually was a very fun interview they did of Marcelito. You can see a type of personality in him that is actually much more playful and a lot more fun.
I've tried my best to be the champion, you know? So I pray always. Okay. Thank you so much.
Up until now, everything that's been portrayed about Marcelito seemed to stack on top of this narrative of him being a poor soul who had to struggle so much in life and is a very humble, very quiet type of person. But if you watch this interview, his personality really shines. And in fact, that's actually what his personality is like. Like when he's back in the Philippines and he's doing interviews in his own language, like recently he was on Vice Ganda, and you could just see he was having a grand old time.
Ganon, di ba? Ganon yung tunog nung kumakanta, ang virgin nung may-ari nung boses.
Wow naman.
Hoop and Holland with Vice, who is known to be a comedian with kind of a jabbing sense of humor. Well, in the interview on AGT, they asked him, well, who do you view as your biggest threat, right? Like, who do you think would win?
I think my biggest competition is Hans. Oh my God, Hans.
And of all people, Marcelito says Hans.
You're so, oh my God. I'm lower. He's higher.
And his reasoning was kind of a joke, like, you know, Hans is really tall and I'm really small, as if kind of suggesting Hans is bigger than life, bigger than I am. Which is a really kind of strange thing to just pop out there. Because up till now, there really hasn't been any interviews or commentary from Marcelito about who he likes backstage and who he thinks is going to win. Well, that is until he was on Vice Ganda. And Vice asked him too, like, who did he feel like was his biggest threat, his biggest competitor on the show? And guess who he said? Well, it wasn't Hans. It was...
Sinong pinaka-mahigpit mong kalaban, feeling mo?
V Unbeatable.
Sino yung unbeatable?
India.
V Unbeatable. That's right. A totally different act. An act that I actually do think is a true threat for Marcelito. V Unbeatable has an absolutely amazing over-the-top performance. Also has an amazing story of coming from so little and working hard to becoming so much. So again, why would AGT coach him to say something different? Well, the thing you have to realize is that At this point, I think it should be pretty clear that the show producers will manipulate all aspects of the show, everything that you see. And it's not the first time that we've heard that past contestants have said that the things that they say backstage are coached.
Almost all of the backstage conversations were fake. They set me up with all sorts of different contestants and would have us pretend to be best buddies or pretend to be rivals.
I'm talking about those show producers feeding people lines to say, things that people may not normally say.
So those corny lines you hear, like, this year I'm going to be the queen of the throne, that's set up and dictated by production as well.
Or things that may even cause drama. In other words, talking about another contestant in a way that they normally wouldn't do.
So like one of the things I was told to say was, have you noticed the past 2 years the winners have been little girls? It's time for an adult to take the throne. That's something I would never say. It's really corny, and also I like little kids, so it totally wasn't natural to me. And I even told them, I was like, but I like little kids, I don't want to say that. And they told me just say it anyway.
Given that Marcelito has said something very different while on AGT doing an interview versus what he said on his own on a separate TV show, it does seem like the way he's propping up Hans is something that he normally would not say.
Things like that are dictated by the production.
So you might be wondering, why would Marcelito go along with this, right? If he's such a humble person who seems to have a very strong code of conduct, if you will, like very strong integrity. Well, I think it's a couple of reasons here. One is that the most obvious thing is that these contracts that they sign with the show very directly stipulate that the show will manipulate the story to serve its purpose, and that you recognize this is happening, and that by signing on this dotted line, you pretty much agree to how you are portrayed, including if it is extremely negative, extremely inflammatory. I mean, this type of language is in the contract mainly because in the past contestants have spoken about how they were portrayed, and it caused a huge brouhaha. This type of language, because it's so specific in the contract, suggests that AGT at this point is trying to protect themselves, knowing full well that is exactly what they're going to do. And the other reason why I think Marcelito had gone along with this is because at the end of the day, he doesn't want to stir things up, right? I think like most contestants, you go along with what's happening because a lot of the little things they ask people to do are pretty innocuous on their own, and you don't really see the full impact of it until you take a step back and see how big of an issue it is. Asking someone to say little things here or there really isn't hurting anyone because truthfully, at the end of the day, it still comes down to the performance, right? They're not changing the fact that Marcelito is going up there and singing in two voices and singing amazingly well. It's just a story that goes along with it. And because these performers are also looking for that type of exposure, they really just don't want to stir things up in general, right? At the end of the day, you're not there to fight with the show producers when they constantly remind you that if you get out of line, they can easily just cut you out at any time. Once again, something that's in the contract. So people go along with it. I want to raise these issues. I want to show you all how so much of the show at this point is produced and reaching a point where it's very questionable, not because I want to kill the show and not to call out these contestants who are complicit in this type of thing. The reality is that we love the show. Lulu and I love watching the show every single year. We love supporting the artists. We love how the show gives these artists who normally would never get a chance to shine to have an audience. But the show is going too far. We're not the only ones who are catching this, but we do have a good sized audience that we feel like we can help evangelize to make sure these show producers keep it real. All right, y'all, let me know what you think. Once again, this show's continually disappointing me with how they're treating the artists, but we're gonna help keep them real. Peace out, y'all.
That's it.